stop it. I don't know.
Thank you.
There.
Perfect.
Welcome.
So welcome everybody. My name is Farah Fancy and you are here in the right place if you are here to see Peter Chin this evening, if you're here in Montreal this morning, if you are in Cambodia, which is where Peter is at the moment. So we thank him for coming from far away in this virtual space. And you are here for the second National Asian Heritage Month Symposium. But before we start, we just want to acknowledge that many of us are settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to the land where we are right now. Or maybe you're Indigenous and perhaps, like myself, not Indigenous to the territory where you are right now, but Indigenous nonetheless. Regardless of where you are, we pay respects to and recognize the original custodians of the land where you are located at the moment. And out of respect for the rights of the Indigenous people, it's our collective responsibility to critically interrogate the colonial histories and the present day implications of this. So at the Festival Accès Asie, we are trying to do this from the perspective of honoring, of sustaining and protecting the land and its people who are here first on the territory where we are, as well as the territory where you are, so that we strive to go beyond just acknowledging the land, and we weave in Indigenous knowledge and share principles and invite you to move beyond just an acknowledgement, but into the doing. And so that's why we've tried our best to incorporate the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit folks into the symposium itself, even though it is the National Asian Canadian Symposium. You see that they were there for the welcome, and you see them in various talks that you might have been sitting on up until now. And each day they offer the First Nations reflection moments. Actually, it's an hour devoted strictly for them, and we've got that for still another 2 more days. So we look forward to having them there for that. But we are here at the moment to hear Peter Chin. So Peter Chin, as I mentioned, is in Cambodia at the moment, but he's an artist who's based in Toronto, and he is the artistic director and interdisciplinary arts company artistic director. He's the artistic director and interdisciplinary arts company called Tribal Crackling Wind, and also the co-founder of NKK International Dance Centre. So Peter, take it away and tell us more about all of this.
Okay. Thank you, Farah. I'm very happy to be here. Hello to everyone who's coming to hear me speak, and I know there are some friends out there, so hello.
Peter, before you go on, if you don't mind adjusting your microphone, because we can't hear your sound as well as before.
Oh, it's because I just plugged that in, so I'm going to... How about now? Can you hear me better?
That is much better. Thank you very much. We want to make sure that we hear everything that you have to offer us today.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not going to use this then. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to speak a little bit about my practice and my background, which will shed light on the principal topic of NKK Dance Centre, which I'm building here in Cambodia, and also to speak about building infrastructure as part of creative work, as a part of my work as an artist and not only a construction project. So, and also to speak about being a global artist. So those are the topics today. So I'm going to just let you know a little bit about myself. I'm from Jamaica, born in 1962, and I came to Toronto in '66, but went back and forth, Jamaica and Toronto, until I was around 12. So I grew up in both places. And this is not just a biographical detail, but I think it's something very formative for me, because my background is, my grandmother was Irish and Black, and then the rest of my family are Chinese. And so I grew up in Jamaica, which is a very racially integrated place, actually. People don't think of it in that way, but it is. I grew up around every mixture, Black, white, Chinese, and more. And that really formed my worldview. Coming to Toronto in '66, of course, the first time, there were not many Asians in 1966. So I did feel the difference of being an other, but obviously now Toronto is a very multicultural place. And that is something that I love about Toronto and that I feed off of, and it has influenced my work. I went to Asia in 1990 to start research, and it has influenced my work since, principally in Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general. My company, Tribal Crackling Wind, is an interdisciplinary company that's dance-driven. Dance is not my training, but I ended up being a dance artist somehow. But I came from music, classical Western music, and then I went for visual arts at York University, where I became a performance artist. As a performance artist, I naturally felt that I could incorporate all of the disciplines that I liked to do. And so people identify me as an interdisciplinary artist, since I write and I direct and I compose and I choreograph, I dance, I sing, which is a good thing because I have all of these things. If I'm not making money in one area, then I can make money in another area. And so I can cover myself, and now I can leave my drug dealing behind, finally. I'm joking. So, as an introduction to Southeast Asia and the dance center that I'm building here, when I was at York University in a performance art class, the teacher showed us Margaret Mead's film, Trance and Dance in Bali. And this was very important to me. This sparked my interest in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia in particular, and also in ritual dance, ritual performance, ritual in general. And so and also the whole idea of life as art. Later I'll speak about how I was prompted to go to Bali because they said that there was no word for art in the Balinese language because it was so integrated into living. So here was a paradigm of life as art, some quixotic notion, but something that was being lived in Bali to a certain degree. And so that inspired me. When I went to Bali, I had very many formative, important, profound experiences that have really unrolled throughout my life, especially my creative life. And so that is the background, and those are my interests. So right from the start, I was interested in indigenous culture. I was both researching courtly arts, courtly performing arts, but also I was looking at tribal work, indigenous work. From an early age as a musician, I always was, even though I was singing Bach and Palestrina and Handel, my Western musical training is in Western classical music. I was always interested as a young person, as a young teenager, in what was called folk music at the time, but world music. And I even made my own kind of tapes. We used tapes then, tapes of me making up my own folk music. Anyway, this trajectory started then and has been blossoming still, even at this moment. I find myself in Cambodia and very interested in connecting with the culture here. I came 17 years ago, and I've been living in Toronto and Cambodia. I would say that I'm based both in Cambodia and Toronto. I came in 1990, sorry, they all kind of fused together, the years. In 2003, I got a grant and I came to the Royal University of Fine Arts to observe classical dancing. The story of Cambodia inspired me principally because in the 70s, of course, there was the Pol Pot era and the war in which 90% of artists died, either murdered or died of starvation or imprisonment. And so a lot of a lot of artists themselves were lost, and also repertoire and connection to their culture was severed through these living libraries. In the 80s, after the war, the 10% of artists who were still around got together, came back together, and in a heartbreaking movement, they began to reconstruct what they knew, what they could remember. And they knew that in these dances, in this music, in these art forms, were codified elements of their soul, individually and as a people. And they knew they must bring this back, not because it's beautiful, well, partly, of course, because it's beautiful, but the reason why it's beautiful is because their souls were in these art forms. To me, this was an inspiration, and I had visited almost all the countries in Southeast Asia before, except Cambodia for some reason. And finally, in 2003, I came, and I was very moved and inspired, and since 2003, it has influenced my life and my work very profoundly, and I have found myself in Cambodia without missing a year for 17 years, which was completely unplanned. So I began to work with dancers and musicians here in Cambodia in a contemporary way, by invitation and by making connections with the artists themselves. And so through that, I learned a lot about the people and how they interact. And throughout the years, I've become welcomed into the milieu. And they even call me Mak Chin, which means Mother Chin, because I became very nurturing. And it was very clear from the start that it was an exchange. I had so much to learn from them and to know about life from their perspective, know about the human condition through their perspective as an artist in Cambodia, looking out in the world and looking within to themselves, to their own culture and to the revival of their own culture, and also how their classical culture, their traditional culture fitted into the 20th and 21st century, and what they did in particular uniquely that was influencing other non-Cambodian artists who were visiting the country, such as myself. The place I felt that we met, me and the artists, was an understanding of what ritual dance was and is. Southeast Asia had already taught me so much about that. Here in Cambodia was a living tradition of connecting with ancestors, connecting with past dance teachers, which is a ceremony that is done before every performance. This is just one part of how they connect with other dimensions, other realms. That is an integral part of what they do as artists and how they live as a human being. It's also part of their daily life. So this also inspired me. Biographically, I've done a lot of work with Cambodian artists. I brought them to Canada as well, did collaborations with Canadian artists and Cambodian artists, worked alone with Cambodian artists in site-specific work in Phnom Penh, for instance. And then I'm currently doing an international work that has Mexican and African diasporic artists, Europeans, Canadians, of course, many of Asian descent. But this international project is from the perspective, from the hub of Cambodia instead of from the West. I am a participant, I am the leader of the project, but the preponderance of artists are Cambodians, and a lot of the research has taken place in Cambodia. So it actually is infused with, I will say, Cambodianness. And this has taught me a lot and continues to teach me about what an international perspective is not from a Western point of view. So this is very important to me to follow through. Of course, the pandemic has interrupted that, but I will come back to it. So now we come to the Dance Centre. The Dance Centre's infrastructure.
I believe you wanted to share, sorry, Peter, I believe that you wanted to share some slides as well.
Some pictures?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry, I got so excited, I just started to blather on. Okay.
It's just you're talking so much about Cambodia, and I know that a lot of people have not been there before. And I know you have some really compelling photos to show us to accompanying what you have to tell us. So I'd love for you to share that with us today.
Okie dokie. I'm sorry about that. I got too excited.
No.
Here we go. I'm just going to do a whole blast of photos. Desktop 1. Hold on. Can you see that now?
I can see, yes, we can. So if you can put it on full screen.
My problem is if I put it on full screen, I have to close and then open, close, open for this series of photographs.
That's okay. It's fine like this. We can see your folders. Yeah, but it's fine. We can get the image. That's no problem.
And yeah, so I haven't figured that out. So this is the rice growing farm produce, one of the areas around Siem Reap, where I am based and where the dance center is being built. This is in front, looking west during the sunset with a hill, a sacred hill in the background called Phnom Krom. This is the sacred lotus pond, which is adjacent to the property, and some kind of Bruegel medieval haystack in the background. This is another view of the lotus pond, which I'll speak about later. It's another view of the pond, another view of the lotus pond. I love lotus. This is the land before we started working on it. It's flooded at the moment because it was used to grow rice. Rassi Hull on the right is the co-founder of NKK Dance Centre, and that is his niece. Another view with water buffalo in the distance, closer to the water buffalo. And let's go up here. This is me as a peasant clearing the land. It's a little, I'm being funny here, but I was actually working. This is our building manager, Tabin Ho. This is a cannonball tree, which is a sacred tree, which is levitating at the moment. This was a donor who gave us this tree, and we planted it there. This is kite flying over the lotus pond. Rassi Hull, as we started to build the perimeter wall. And let's go back. I'm so sorry. This is when we started to build the first structure, and this is the construction team. This is a ceremony which construction workers request on their behalf before we start to work on the land, to dig the ground for the foundation, in order to communicate with the land spirits and ask for their permission to alter the land and to ask for their approbation so nothing goes wrong and everything goes right and everyone is safe. This is the beginning of one structure with a very Southeast Asian and other places kind of scaffolding. And let's go back now. Another picture later in the process. Just to give you a sense of Siem Reap, it is famous for its Angkorian temples from 9th century to 13th century. Very famous. Here's an example. This is Taprom, and tree. And this is me recently dancing at Taprom with this magnificent tree. Again, another picture of the process. Here is an auspicious sign. There have been many, many, many phenomena in the sky, from double halos, sun halos, iridescent clouds. This was one of them. It's very encouraging. Here is the upper level with the view of the countryside. I love this picture, and the clouds. Another one, and another one with Phnom Krom in the distance. Rassi Hall with a very bucolic scene in the background of cows and rice fields. Here is the next door neighbor, and they're planting drakun. It's morning glory, with the first structure, a residence house in the background. And here is the pond, the lotus pond, before the lotus have come up. And again, another bucolic scene. Here is an old wooden house, a very traditional wooden house, which we purchased for the wood, to repurpose the wood so that we wouldn't have to buy new wood, and to make a green effort in that way. So the whole dismantling process was quite fascinating. And these columns are quite old. They're about 100 years old and very strong, and we will reuse these in the studio. Another picture of the dismantling. Here is a picture of the countryside around NKK. Here is a view, Here is a view from the pond with a farmer on the left. Here is some of the salvaged wood from the old house. Here's another phenomenon that happened in the sky, this iridescent cloud. Perhaps they were aliens. It was amazing. And the picture is not another surrounding countryside picture. Beautiful. Here is a wooden deck that we had built right by the lotus pond, which connects us to the spirit of the lotus pond. Here are the cows in the lotus pond. This is later on. And we're almost done. Here is an upper level with large windows. There will be railings put in the windows so no one falls out. Here is Rassi Hall, the co-founder, speaking to a neighbor around the lotus pond. And I will tell the story now, even though it's slated for later. But she says that this pond has been there since she was born and before, and that people used to come there and pray to ancestors. So it is an ancestral lotus pond. There used to be a tree also on this property, which became the focus of people's prayers as well. So like a Bodhi tree, somewhere where you pray, somewhere where you focus your spiritual energy. She said that the spirit, the guardian spirit of this pond, is a female. When Rassi Hall, the co-founder, made the purchase of the land 2 years ago, before we knew anything, he had a dream where he was standing on the land and a voice said to him, "Ask who is the guardian of the land." And so he asked, and before him appeared a woman with decoration in her hair. And she said, "I am the guardian of the land. I am Niang Konkantail Bang Milia." Rassi Hall asked me to write this down so he wouldn't forget. 2 years after that, when we began work on the land, Rassi asked me, "What was that dream again?" And I repeated it to him. So Niang Konkantail means the lady of the round mat, resting mat. Bung Milia, we didn't know the meaning, although there's a famous temple called Bung Milia. When I looked up Bung Milia, when we did the research, we found out that Bung Milia best translates as lotus pond. So without knowing lotus pond, it was communicated to Rasi in the dream that she was the lady of the round mat of the lotus pond. So again, like the skies, these were auspicious, this was auspicious information. When we built a well and we began to pump the water up, it was muddy for the longest while, longer than usual, and Rasi asked for the help of Niang Kong Kuntel, Bangmalia, and immediately the water came out clear. We had the water tested and it is drinkable. It's my first well. I've never had a well before, so it was so exciting to have this gift of living water from the ground that is free. I mean, that is not to be taken for granted. When one of the workers began to work on the house, of course, there were many offerings done, as I explained before. He began to have, without knowing about our experiences, he had dreams that he was being burdened by a woman connected to the land who was piling too many bricks in his hand and asking him to carry them upstairs. And it was too much of a burden for him. And he fell sick for a day or two. And then when we heard the dream, we thought, well, perhaps we can cooperate to communicate correctly with whatever forces are communicating with us so that we can balance the situation. And so we did that. So it's just been interesting to have this corroboration from two other people about a female spirit on the land. So we're running with that. And it's been a very beautiful experience to have that other dimensional affirmation about what we are doing and that we belong there and that we are stewards in cooperation with the land. And I will continue with pictures. Here is a pavilion we built right beside the lotus pond on the deck. Again, this gives us access directly to the pond, which I believe is a healing pond. Also, I should mention that the Apsara Foundation, which is the Apsara Authority, which is the authority that manages all of the archaeological sites in Cambodia, very powerful, have also claimed that the pond is under their jurisdiction. So we know that the pond is protected. No one can build it or destroy it. I think part of the reason why is because Angkor, 1,000 years ago, was so successful because of its irrigation, its water management, its canal system. It was revolutionary at the time. So there were many ponds and waterways historically. So I believe the Apsara Foundation has claimed all of the ponds as, you know, potentially being a part of this archaeological heritage. Just letting you know that. There's a hammock. Here's the lotus. Here is a meeting hall. Anyway, everything is under construction. Here is a balcony here's a cow. Yes, I think those are the pictures. And let me take off sharing now. You are screen sharing, stop share. So I'm ready to proceed with speaking. Tell me, how much time do I have, Farah? And then I can gauge myself.
Absolutely. So you have, there's 20 minutes left of this talk, but if you wanted to leave a little bit of time in that 20 minutes, just so that in case any questions arise, that would be great.
Absolutely. I don't want to speak for the whole time. I'm going to look through my notes now that you have that introduction to me and to NKK, International Dance Centre, and Cambodia. And so within that context, you will more easily understand what I'm going to talk about now. So I'm going to give myself license to be a little bit meandering. I've asked myself the question on your behalf, why in Cambodia and not Toronto? There are many reasons for that. Of course, I could never afford to build a dance center in Toronto. Let's put it that way. But specifically in Cambodia, there are many reasons. I am giving back in that way because this infrastructure is not just, I will say primarily, it isn't even for me. Certainly it is for me, and I can do my work in the studio, which we will build, and it will be a big studio. But I've grown so in love and committed and devoted to the artists here who are forging new work. I will tell you that they are all traditionally and classically trained, and that they emerge from that training to become contemporary artists at the same time as they are traditional artists. I find the contemporary dance scene very exciting and new. It's maybe 15 or less years old, but it's very vibrant and very interesting how they have made the transition from their classical training in their bodies and in their intellects to their own Khmer, Khmer is in Cambodian, Khmer manifestation of who they are as contemporary artists. And I'm honored, I'll probably say this again later, I'm honored and moved that I've been embraced by this milieu. Another reason why I've done it in Cambodia is because I feel connected to Cambodia in its nature, in its culture, and by building on the land, I have been connected to aspects of the culture in its practicalities and in its mystery, in ways that, you know, going to the store or going to the dance studio or other activities wouldn't give me. To actually dig into the ground, plant trees, put down foundations, work with the workers, negotiate with the workers, to make something that is going to last, that has a legacy, that is going to be of use, that is going to support creativity, has been my honor, has given me so much, I'm sorry, and taught me so much. Also, you know, the stories that I just spoke about the mystical connections with the land, have brought me into a connection with the spirituality, the unique spirituality that Cambodia itself emanates. I'm honored and privileged that I can be part of that. The messages, the lessons about living and about being a human being and about being a global member from all of this activity and all of these revelations have been very moving, very invaluable, very life-affirming, have been epiphanies. Also, it's important that the dance center in Cambodia, from Cambodian land, working with Cambodians in the Cambodian natural environment, is the hub of an international initiative, rather than a sense of internationalism that is centralized in a Western notion or paradigm into which non-Western elements must fit. Again, as a Westerner, I was brought up in Toronto and Jamaica. It has been an education and an honor to be so immersed, as much as I have been, in Cambodia with this building project and with artists, and to learn and to be fused to a certain degree with them in their heart, to have a different perspective of what a global project is that does not originate from a centralized Western perspective. This is a gift. And I'm not trying to be political, it's just my life. So I think that's wonderful. And that's something I love to share. This dance center is primarily for Cambodians, for residencies, and also for the region, ASEAN, Southeast Asia. I am connected to networks already in that way, and Canadians. So Cambodians, ASEAN, and Canadians. I'm a Canadian. Because what I have experienced here, I want to share. I think the worldview and how it affects your creativity, your artistry. As a Westerner, I think there's much value by doing it in a place such as NKK International Dance Centre. And I really feel that this dance center is not only culturally exciting because of the history, archaeologically, of the place and also the connection to the artists, but the natural environment that I've spoken about. So lots of wonderful things. And I'm so excited to share that with my whole heart. Cambodia has been an underdog in the region. I would say it's the poorest Southeast Asian nation for a reason, because of the war in the 70s. Before that, Cambodia was very in a good place regionally and was admired and emulated. The war, of course, changed all of that. Also, the development of dance and new dance was interrupted by the war in the 70s. So compared to a country, say, Indonesia, which has been steadily making very exciting advances in their contemporary work in dance, Cambodia was interrupted. And so what I see is so exciting, though it's in its early stages. And this is something I want to support. And I'm not going to be around forever. I'm 58 now. So this dance studio is for artists in the future as well. I know 58 is not that old. Y'all out there who are 58 and are saying, what are you talking about? 58 is not old. But you start thinking about these things. So those are the reasons why it's in Cambodia. I'd like to talk about life and art. Again, going back to the Margaret Mead Transcendence in Bali film that I saw when I was a student at York University, and how that affected me in 1982. This notion of life is art, or the integration of life and art, has increasingly become something that is not just a quixotic notion that I keep in the back of my mind, but something that is more and more a reality, both in my thinking and both in my actions, and in the integration of my heart, my actions, my thinking, and the effect that I have outside of myself on the world. I'm not necessarily talking about a Western term called Gesamtkunstwerk, which is kind of total art. It's more than that, because that just talks about all of the arts at play at the same time by one author. What I'm talking about is everything at play, integrated and the artistic impulse and the creative act is integrated into everything we do, say, think. And that, and I know it sounds, that a life can be a work of art. So I am pursuing that. And the building of this dance center is a creative act as part of my work. It is not just the acquisition of infrastructure. And sometimes I have to explain that very assertively to some people because it's hard to understand it outside of those terms. I've already told you reasons why, as a legacy that I'm building it and giving back, and as a form of connection, not just with the people, but with the land. Everything about it has meaning. Everything in the whole umbrella of my life has meaning. And the practicalities of it, you could look at, or the planning of it, or the design of it, you could look at as craft, going into a work of art, or a component of a work of art. More and more, the separation, compartmentalization of what we do as being artistic, creative, and not artistic, not creative, are dissolving, are being deconstructed for me, both outside of myself and shown to me, and also by my own deliberation. The Dance Center is part of that. I'm gonna speak about other things now, let me see.
Actually, Peter, just so you're aware, we just have about 8 minutes left of this talk. So I just wanted to offer, in case anybody in the audience has any questions to ask you, but at the same time, I know that they're really riveted by what you're talking about right now, but I just wanted to put that offering out there before you continue on.
Okay, Farah. I'm almost done according to my notes. Let me see. I think that's it. What do you know?
That was absolutely amazing. So, Peter, what are your plans for the center in the future? You're saying that this is your legacy. Do you want to have more people solicit residencies for you? Are you looking for collaborations? You're already involved in a number of projects, but is there an opening there to collaborate with you, or
yes,
to go there?
Mm-hmm. I would say that the key word is open. That it's not. It's almost a blank. It's almost a empty canvas, carte blanche. It is a facility that will be open. I mean, there's specifics, parameters that I explained, but it's open. Yes, I am looking for partners. I am looking for people who want to have residencies there. As I said, I'm networking with the Southeast Asian groups, organizations, individuals, companies who have an interest in this kind of space. And also Khosrow himself has been speaking to me to collaborate so that Canadians of Asian connection can consider NKK Dance Centre as a resource. Many dance centers have a model of operation where residencies, a certain amount of residencies are offered for free as a kind of offering. I will do the same. Otherwise, there will be running costs. The studio will be quite large and it will have a dance surface. One of the very few in Cambodia. And the surface will not be concrete, which is usually the case here. So I am happy to have a to offer artists here a floor that has much give. It's going to be a wooden floor on columns. I'm also building, this is a long-term project. I'm also building sleeping quarters, residency quarters. So people can be based here for a period and be inspired by the surroundings, the life, the agrarian lifestyle, and also close to the city, and also close to the temples. Also, I forgot to mention that NKK Dance Centre is close, very close to Southeast Asia's largest lake, which flows into the Mekong. And so it's the habitat of abundant wildlife, especially birds, and there are conservation groups around. So the nature is very compelling. So yes, just like my work, my stage work or my site-specific work, it is for everyone and anyone. And that's where we start.
I'm just going to read out a couple of the comments that have come in through the chat, just so people who are watching this on the replay know what has been said. We have a comment here from Sangeeta Wiley. Canadian Living Arts is a group involved in that reconstruction that you were speaking about in the beginning of your talk. And Sangeeta had met some of the dancers from this group in Malaysia last year, and it was heartwarming to see and learn of their mission and see their dances. We also have a comment from Amrita Chaudhary saying, thank you, Peter, for sharing this lovely presentation. I understand completely what you're saying, and I want to share with you that I went to a school called Satinketan. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. The Abode of Peace, which is founded by the poet Tagore, where art was life and life was art, in deep connection with nature. So in ways that you described similarly, also the Balinese way of life and art, as you were explaining. So thank you very much for sharing that. Lovely to know it's contemporary, in this contemporary time, that there still exists this as well, all of what you've been saying. So thank you very much for that comment, Amrita. So Peter, we have unfortunately come to the close of your talk. I know that we can talk about this at length, and also we hope to actually do continue this conversation in other ways, shapes, and forms, and perhaps in Cambodia. Perhaps we will meet over there. You'll meet some of the participants who are here today. And so thank you very much, Peter, for coming with us. For those of you who are watching, please do come and meet with Peter. You can connect with him, and he will have his address available through the listing that we have of all of the panelists, as well as the participants who've given permission to do so, and he can give the contact for the NKK Dance Centre, our International Dance Centre. And also, just to let you know, there's so many other panelists who've been absolutely amazing, and you can watch those on the replay in case you missed some of those. And as you know, daily basis, we have those First Nations reflection chats. And just as a last note, we have the working group breakout sessions coming tomorrow. So this is where we're going to be creating some action. So we hope to see you tomorrow, creating action, creating those sparks. And once again, thank you very much, Peter.
You are welcome, Farah. Thank you, Farah, very much. And thank you, Accès Asie, and to all the participants.
Thank you, everyone. We hope that you have a great day.